Hello. I want to talk about. Wait, what the?
The zombies are coming.
This video is gonna. This video. One second. There we go. Anyways, this video is gonna piggyback a little bit off of my last video. In that video, you might have noticed I created a small base, complete with walls, a watchtower, and.
Flappin' Flotsam, what's that?
Okay, I didn't complete it, and that's because base building sucks. JK.
I'm sorry, babe. I didn't mean that.
But I want to talk about it, to share why I've never built a base in Dayz. And more so, I wanted to touch on some of the main reasons others build bases. And finally, how could they not only improve base building, but make it more appealing or even integral to the gameplay? This video is going to explore those ideas, and I'll talk about some ideas I have, but I'm not going to be all negative about base building. You know, base building has been a hot topic for a while now, and there's been a growing outcry for a substantial update. I believe it'll come, but I hope they add or rework a few of the game's core mechanics, which I'll get into later. So before this video, I had never built a base, and I still haven't built one on live servers. But it's not like I've never tried. Like a year ago, a friend and I were trying to set one up on an official server, and we only needed 2 gates to block the door. It seemed so easy. We had barrels and a tent inside, but once we got to searching for tools, it became so tedious. It was similar to finding a car, but instead of needing 1 radiator and 1 tire, you need 10 radiators and 1 tire still. The experience wasn't very engaging, and the reward wasn't worth our time, so we ended up abandoning the base idea. And since then, I've never really had a reason to build one. The only other reason I could think of for me would be to prepare to loot the gas zones. But even then, that would be overkill. Like, I've had no problem doing the quest by myself. I enjoy starting from scratch, slowly building my character up and then looking for fights along the way. And that slow type of loot progression works for me. It fits my playstyle. And when it comes to building in Dayz, what's available now doesn't. And I imagine that's true for a lot of players. Like, there is no way even base builders are satisfied. Every single discussion I see on base building has people begging for more depth and functionality. Please tell me I'm crazy for thinking like this, but there is no way. Like right now, there are 2 things you can build: fences and watchtowers, and that's it. Base building boils down to blocking other players out of an area, hoarding loot, and pretending you're doing something strategic.
Pow.
Okay, but there is some good in that. Like, I get why players build. Storing extra loot can be really nice, and you can store cars too, which makes traversing the map a lot easier. And when you die, if you have teammates, you can have someone pick you up and instantly have a sweet loadout. Like, it's gotta be nice to have a secure location you can always go back to. Yes, it's a huge investment, but it rewards you later, which I think is a solid start. My problem is, what do you do after that? You're fully geared, your base is stocked with endless loot, now what? Do you just roam the map looking for fights, or do you try to help out fresh spawns?
He's already dead.
See, for me, I think it's a bit bland. I've experienced Dayz's super late game, where you have everything you've ever wanted, and I imagine it's no different whether or not you have a base. With a base, yes, you're prepared for the future, yet it's mostly towards your next life. Well, what if it were more towards this life? And what if I told you I had some solutions to not only that, but to improving base building as a whole? Improvements that would make building much more enjoyable, even if your goal isn't to settle down. Yes, you heard me right. And well, let me tell you. One obvious addition that I think everyone would agree on is the ability to board up doors and windows. And what I would do with that is add new tiers to building. You can start with the basic boards, move to reinforced doors and windows, and then upgrade to fences and build similar to what's in the game now. The difference is alongside these tiers, I would add both benefits and drawbacks depending on the size of your build, which we'll get into later. Baseline, I'd introduce other materials like scrap metal and cloth. and these materials would be super common. With scrap metal, you could use the already available piles of junk. They're literally everywhere. And with cloth, they could simply allow you to combine a bunch of rags. To support these additions, I'd introduce dismantling.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
What are you, fucking nuts?
Okay, yes, it's a very ambitious ask, but it would be so cool if they added new ways our players could modify the environment. Like, imagine if we could dismantle wooden pallets, street signs, and even furniture. But I'm sure it'd be a huge task to add something like that, so I'll leave it there. Back to tier 1. There are a lot of changes I'd make to support this feature. For one, these would be easy to break through by other players. This would prevent you from easily gatekeeping loot. And with a higher focus on building, I'd add a new fragile tool. A small multi-tool. So with these additions, you can now more easily build and fortify. But why? If you're not building a base, what would be the reason to fortify a building? Well, I'm gonna change the infected in ways that I believe are possible in today's Dayz. And yes, we're talking about infected in a base building video, but increasing their threat level at all stages of the game would insanely increase the importance of building. In my last video, I talked about the current state of the infected, mainly on why I think they need a rework. And I'd like to expand on that a bit. But this time, the changes will be centered around building. So you don't need to have watched that video, but if this topic interests you, go check it out. Alright, first off, I'd introduce 2 new variants of infected. This might sound a bit concerning, but don't worry, they're not going to be insanely overpowered or anything like that. The first variant would be a heavier infected that can slowly break open doors, anything built, and windows if possible. They wouldn't be as common as the normal infected, but they're not going to be rare either. And they're a little tankier to match their visuals. This would add strategy to taking out infected. And if they can now break into buildings, you're going to be a lot more careful when it comes to alerting a group of them. Or you'd open fire against them more often, even in the late game. You wouldn't shoot them just for target practice anymore, but because they could still get to you and kill you even when you're fully geared. And to stay consistent, the second variant would be an infected that could lunge. It could jump up obstacles like cars and the concrete blocks found around tents. Maybe even climb up ladders. I don't know how that would exactly work, but I think it would be a perfect addition. I mean, you already have the infected that crawl around. Imagine if those ones were jumpers that would follow you on top of things. These also wouldn't be as common as normal infected, but they would spice up the fight with infected. And overall, these 2 variants would make infected much more threatening. So you're like, okay, cool, this zombies game is gonna be more of a zombie game, but I'm still not gonna build. Well, imagine if they introduced hordes. In my previous video, I explored dynamic hordes that roam toward player activity, which I still think would be an amazing addition, but what if there are also events that spawn in stationary hordes, or hordes that would pass by your base? For the events, maybe they had something like a car crash with the horn going off, or a military outpost where a small group made their last stand. You could have the surrounding area provide you with a higher tier of loot, or just the event cars and stuff. You might have the ammo to extinguish the horde, or you could board up a building and fight them that way. I don't know about you, but if I saw another survivor around this area, I'd be much more likely to try and start an alliance to fight through a horde like that. It would be so fun to fortify a building to defend, and then you're rewarded for it. From spawn cities like Chernogorsk to late game areas like Lapatino, they would be worth trying for and extremely engaging. Now you'd use your grenades, ammo, or melee weapons on something other than players. And shoot, if you had a base, going on a loot run would feel way less predictable. Maybe you'd even want to bring out more supplies just in case. Or imagine if the horde would come to you. You could lay low and let them pass or fight through them. With these changes, the infected would become a real threat at every stage of the game. That's the key, which would keep the experience tense and engaging. Let me know what you think about these changes. But let's circle back to building and wrap things up with the final 2 tiers. Let's say you're ready to go further. You want to settle down, claim a building, or even build a full base. Let's talk about it. With tier 2, you could continue to upgrade and reinforce buildings with your own custom barriers. They wouldn't be as durable as the walls currently in the game, but still solid, with levels of their own, including wood and metal variants. And to fortify even further, I'd introduce the ability to build with sandbags and sheet metal barriers. They could be built as cover and would be versatile enough to set up almost anywhere. And like, there are so many other makeshift builds players would love, like improvised gun racks, sleeping bags, and mesh alarm traps. I'd love for there to be wooden ladders, or a flimsy rope you could craft to hang out of windows, to breach or escape from. It would make base defense more interesting. You gotta be careful with additions like these though, but that's where I think the flagpole can come in and work similarly to the tool cabinets found in Rust, to simply lock players out of building in a radius. While we're talking about the flagpole, here's where the benefits and consequences come in. The flagpole, similarly to how it works now, would act as the central tracker of your base. Once it's built, players can meet a criteria required to unlock buffs by adding things like beds, water catchers, etc. For example, placing beds and chilling next to them could give the player a stamina buff, representing the feeling of being well rested. As you develop the base, these buffs could grow stronger, similar to how the heat buff works, and there could be many different ones. Players could even gain pluses next to their health, hunger, or hydration meters. On the flip side, I'd love if creating a flagpole and a significant POI would attract additional zombies in the surrounding area. And this threat level could significantly increase depending on the size of the base. This is an addition I'd love to hear feedback on because I could see it being controversial. But still, I think it would create a meaningful trade-off. Players would be inclined to build off-grid and leave the bigger, high-traffic areas alone, unless they want a challenge. And I'd categorize each map's locations into tiers. You have low, forests, farms, and fields, medium, towns, castles, and hunting, and high, cities, military bases, and airfields. And this adds an extra layer of consequence to where and how players choose to build. And I think these changes would make it much more rewarding and interesting to build a base. And now we're pretty much at tier 3, which would be similar to the bases we have in the game now, but with simple improvements, like the option to build on hills and walls that would snap together. Maybe add some new builds like the previously mentioned beds or water catchers. They could add furnaces to work with scrap metal, more materials to build with, more decorations, or even new defenses using barbed wire and wooden spikes. And now you'd be thinking, man, I can't wait to build in Dayz. Like, I think all of these changes would transform the game in such a positive way. They would add meaningful depth to building, and the infected would play much more of an active role in the game. But what do you think? Would you end up building a base with these improvements? Would you like zombies to be more threatening? What do you usually do once you've finished gearing up? Let me know down in the comments. That's all I've got for today. If you made it to the end, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.
I have a screen door shield. We are the undead.